Howdy, howdy, Chris here, and welcome back to Garage Noise. Today we're going to be painting this rear bumper. I'm going to share with you how to prep and paint this. We're going to be using a Sagola 3300 GTO paint gun, and we're going to be saving a lot of time and prep work by using one simple product, this adhesion promoter primer. So let's get into it. This primer is designed to save you a bunch of time sanding when you're prepping out your raw bumper for paint. This is a raw OEM bumper for Toyota Avalon. Now, this primer, Transtar Adhesion Promoter Primer, what it's designed to do is to spray right over a raw bumper cover so you don't have to sand or prep it before you apply this primer. So typically with raw bumpers, you have to go through multiple procedures to get it prepped out for primer, paint, and clear coat. With this primer, basically all you have to do is wash it. You want to wash it and clean it thoroughly. And you can use soap and water, and I would recommend like a prep solvent to clean it after you wash it, or an isopropyl alcohol, which is what we used. Now, we did scuff over this just with a gray scuff pad, got all the edges, but you don't necessarily have to do it. I just did it because it's a quick and easy step, a little bit of an insurance policy when using this primer. This primer can be sprayed right over the raw bumper after you clean it and prep it properly, so you want to make sure it's clean. Wash it down with isopropyl alcohol or prep solvent, and then you can spray this primer directly over the bumper cover, and it's going to have a chemical adhesion, and that is why this primer can be sprayed directly over a raw bumper after cleaning. Like I said, we went ahead and scuffed it with a fine gray scuff pad. Now we're going to wash it once again before we apply this primer. Now this primer is ready to spray, so you just stir it up, pour it right in your gun, and you can spray it right over this bumper cover, and then you want to allow it 10 to 15 minutes to cure, and then you can spray your base coat right over that primer. So let's go ahead, wash this bumper, and then we'll put our primer in our gun. We'll spray our primer over this, our base coat, and then our clear coat. Okay, so we're going to simply, I've used this before, we're going to simply shake this up. We're using the Spray IQ disposable cup system. You can find the links to this product in the description. This is a reasonably priced disposable cup system. It's the Series 1 system. I'll pour this directly in. Now this is not the cheapest stuff in the world, but it saves so much time when you're doing raw bumpers. There we go. We'll just pop this gun on here. I'm going to show you a little tip with this disposable cup system. We want to eliminate all the extra air in here so we can spray upside down if we need to. So what I'm just going to do is pull the trigger until all that air is sucked out. Once material starts coming out of the gun, now we can spray upside down if we need to. Set our air pressure at about 18 psi. Okay, and that's all we need. It doesn't have to be, like if it's a little transparent, that's okay. We're just looking for that chemical adhesion. And now we can go ahead and spray our base coat directly over this without sanding or prepping it. It can go directly over this. Or our sealer, if you want to seal it, you could seal it before you sprayed your base coat on. Okay, so we got our base coat mixed up in this. We're just going to tack it off. I'm going to put the first coat of base on with low air pressure, about 12. 2 turns out from closed on the fluid volume, and then my fan pattern I'm going wide open, and then I'm going to turn it half a turn back. Before you start applying your base, you want to check the surface of the primer. Make sure there's no particles of dust or anything trapped in your primer. Make sure it's nice and smooth. You don't want any roughness. You want it to be smooth to the touch, so when you apply your base, you get a smooth looking finish. Now, if you do find a particle of dust or there's any dry spray or roughness in your primer, you can lightly sand it with some 600 grit sandpaper to smooth that out before you apply your base. So this is a good opportunity to check your primer. Make sure it's nice and smooth before you apply your base coat. In normal temperatures, I would typically use about 15 to 18 psi when spraying base coat. Because it's still summer and it's hot, I want to lower that air pressure so I get more paint on the surface of this bumper. It's important to apply your base nice and uniform. You want a consistency. If you're spraying a metallic finish, you want a consistency in those metallics. So the way to get that is to overlap consistently. So you want to overlap 75 to 80%. So what that means is when you make a pass, you overlap that previous pass 75 to 80%. This will give you a nice consistent finish in your base coat. The paint we're using today is the Nason XL. It's a reasonably priced paint line that provides very good coverage. So it's going to take about 2 to 3 coats to cover the surface of this bumper so we don't have any transparency. In between coats, depending on the temperature, you're going to want to wait about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, in these hot temperatures, you don't have to wait quite as long, but just give it a little bit of time so it can start to flash off, dull out, and then you can apply your second coat. You don't want to try and get full coverage in one coat. Do multiple coats, let it flash off in between, and you'll get better coverage and it'll go much quicker. For our second coat of base, I want to go ahead and try out the Sagola Xtreme minigun. Before my final coat of base, I like to check my coverage, make sure there's no transparent areas. So I'm using my Astro sunlight here to check all the edges. Just make sure everything's looking good before we apply our last coat of base. For my final coat of base, I switch back over to the Sagola 3300 GTO with my Gun Bud light. This is a handy little tool that helps light up your area when you're painting, especially good if you're working out of your garage or at home. You can check out all the links to the tools and products I use. They'll be down in the description. If you ever find yourself getting what they call mottling, which is an inconsistency in your metallics, there's a couple things you can do. You can check your air pressure, because a lot of times mottling occurs when you have too much air pressure and not enough fluid coming out of your gun, okay? The other thing you can do that might help is to do a drop coat, which is just simply increasing your distance from the panel a bit. You don't want to spray it on dry, but you just increase that distance a bit. You still want to overlap 75 to 85% so you get good, even coverage. Okay, now it's time to lay down some clear coat. I'm going to give you all the information you need to lay down a beautiful looking clear coat finish. First up, I've switched guns. I'm using a low volume, low pressure paint gun. This gun consumes very little CFMs, so it's about 3.9 to 4.5 CFMs of air to operate efficiently. This is a YT160. I'll leave a link in the description, but I've got a full review coming up on this gun with everything that it comes with. If you're not spraying with a paint booth, you're spraying at home, this is a great gun because it produces less overspray and uses less materials. Now, the way I set up this gun is I've got the fluid volume 2.5 turns out from closed. My air pressure is still at about 28 psi, 28 to 30. And I'm going to overlap my passes 75 to 80%. When you're applying clear coat, it's important to have a consistent speed and a consistent distance from the panel at all times. You should always be watching that clear land on the panel, evaluating the finish and what it looks like. If you're getting a little bit of dry spray, you're probably a little bit too far away from the panel. And if you're getting too much clear coat on the panel, you're not moving quick enough or you're too close. You can adjust how that clear coat lays on the panel by adjusting your speed and your distance. On the first coat of clear, it doesn't matter as much. You just want to introduce that clear coat to the surface. If you have a couple little dry areas, not a big deal. You can slick it out on your second coat. Remember, if you're spraying in normal temperatures like 70 degrees, this clear coat's going to flow out just a little bit. So if you get a little bit of orange peel on your first coat, it's going to flow just a little bit and smooth out. Now, if you're on a hot day like it has been lately, like 100 degrees, it's not going to flow out as much or not at all. Now, I'm using a slow activator, so make sure you're using the right temperature activator for the temperature you're spraying in. But I'm laying on the clear coat a little bit heavy because it's about 100 degrees today. Remember that you only need 2 coats of clear. You want to wait 10 to 15 minutes in between coats, depending on the temperature. I'm on my second coat here, so let's go ahead and finish up the second coat and take a look at the finished product. I'm really happy with how this bumper turned out. That YT160 really laid down a beautiful flat clear coat finish. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you want to check out the YT160 or the Adhesion Promoter Primer, check out the links in the description. I appreciate each and every one of you watching, and we'll see you next time on Garage Noise.